Hi everyone, Natalie here, and I want to dive into something that's been a huge game changer for my design workflow, and that's the transition from Canva to Adobe Express. If you're a designer like me, especially one who already uses Adobe Creative Cloud apps like Adobe Photoshop and Adobe Illustrator, then you're going to want to keep watching this video. So here's a sponsored video on why Adobe Express has won me over Canva. So first off, let's talk about my go-to Instagram stories template designed in Adobe Illustrator. It's the heart of my social media presence, filled with elements I've designed myself alongside fonts from Adobe Typekit. However, getting this template to play nicely with Canva has been a bit of a challenge, and I'm about to show you why. If you're familiar with Canva, you've probably encountered the same problem I did. Uploading an Adobe Illustrator file lets you edit text, but the rest of the elements are locked into a single image. So there's no way to quickly make edits to these elements. You'll have to make those edits directly in Adobe Illustrator, then re-upload to Canva, which led me to a lot of frustration. Now let's bring that same Adobe Illustrator file into Adobe Express, and this is where the magic unfolds. I like to use this template for my social media accounts stories. So sometimes I'll share news like sneak peeks of new designs. For example, this is a new couple of art designs I've created that are available for art licensing. So let's explore why Adobe Express takes the cake. So right off the bat, you'll notice text editing. Just like Canva, we can edit the text on our artboards. But here's the game changer. My fonts sync seamlessly with Adobe Typekit. So yes, I'm tapping into Adobe Typekit fonts within the Adobe Express application. And this is a huge plus for me because the fonts that come with Adobe Typekit are really hard to beat in comparison to the fonts that come with Canva. So now you'll see that for this artboard, I'm just going to add an arrow and some animation, which again, you could do in Canva, but I want to show you something else that's really important in Adobe Express that you cannot do in Canva. So here's what's really cool. Unlike Canva, I can actually make edits to my design elements on my artboards in Adobe Express. Just like with this little star, I can adjust the placement, the sizing, all of these little elements, like these little sparkles on the right side as well. I can adjust the placement and sizing. I do not have to go back into Adobe Illustrator to make those edits and then have to re-upload into Adobe Express. That's just a lot of extra work, and this just makes my design flow super seamless, quick, and efficient. So importing Adobe Illustrator files is a huge win for me, especially for my design process. And of course, I don't want to forget to mention that this includes Photoshop files as well. So you can import both Adobe Illustrator files and Photoshop files and make quick edits directly within Adobe Express, like updating copy, color, moving and swapping images, or adding animations. Another amazing feature that is included with Adobe Express that you cannot do in Canva is what Adobe calls linked assets. So you'll see here on the left side of my screen, I can access my Adobe Cloud files and add a Photoshop file like this design here that's available for licensing, and it is linked to that Photoshop file. So basically this means you can add Photoshop or Illustrator files to Adobe Express that stay in sync as you make edits in Photoshop or Illustrator. So for example, I'm adding this Photoshop file design to my artboard, and I actually want to go ahead and make some edits to it. So I want to change the colors to this design. So I don't want to have to go back and have to re-upload the Photoshop files to Adobe Express. Instead, I'll just go make those edits in Photoshop and I can have it synced up with Adobe Express. So let me show you how this works. I have my design opened up in Adobe Photoshop and I want to adjust the color. So I'll go in and change the color of my design. Once that's ready to go, I'll go ahead and reopen Adobe Express. And you'll see at the bottom it says your linked assets have changed, and I can update those assets on the Adobe Express artboard, and then you'll see that the changes in color are happening in real time. So this is amazing because I don't have to go back into Photoshop and re-edit those and then re-upload to Adobe Express. Instead, I can make those edits in Photoshop and then it just syncs directly with the image in Adobe Express. So here I have another artboard. I want to add another of my art designs that are available for licensing. So I'll look through my Creative Cloud files on the left side of my screen, and then I'll add that file. So this one is another Photoshop file that I'm going to add. And the same process again, if I want to make any edits to the color, any edits to this design, I can make those edits in Photoshop and then it'll sync directly with the Adobe Express image here. So overall, I am in love with the linked assets feature in Adobe Express. It's a huge game changer for us designers and artists. It just speeds up the process. For me, it's really made my design process seamless and it's changed the way I'm designing and creating art and creating news for my art. So for example, this is me creating stories for my social media to spread the news that, hey, I have some new art available for licensing. I have my template that I can import from Adobe Illustrator. I can make edits to that template directly to any of the little elements on my design, and I can add linked assets to my artboard. So these are some amazing features that come with Adobe Express that I highly recommend checking out in case you are interested in learning more. To top it off, I'm just going to add some animations to all of my artboards to really bring it all together for my Instagram stories when I make this announcement for some art licensing that's available. And once it's all done, let's take a look how it looks. I'm only using 4 artboards, and I'll click play on all of my animations just to make sure everything looks good for my social account. So this looks great. I'll go on to the second artboard, and I love the way this animation looks, very simple. And then we'll add another one to the Mother's Day section, and then lastly to the contact. So this is the last artboard for my social media. And then when I'm all done, I'll go ahead and select the artboards that I want to export. So I'm selecting the 4 artboards that I made edits to, and I'll click on download, and they are ready to go for my Instagram account. So remember, if you are trying to make the transition from Canva to Adobe Express, linked assets are amazing, as well as importing Adobe Photoshop and Illustrator files and being able to edit, elements on the design without having to go back into those applications and edit them and re-upload them. So definitely check out Adobe Express, and if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below.